Saint Francis Xavier was born in Navarre in the northern Spain in the family castle of Xavier, where Basque was the native language. He was the third son of the president of the council of the king of Navarre, most of whose kingdom was soon to fall to the crown of the castle. Francis grew up at Xavier and received his early education there. As was often the case with younger sons of the nobility, and in 1525 he journeyed to the University of Paris, the theological center of Europe, to begin his studies. In 1529, Ignatius of Loyola, another Basque student, was assigned to room with Francis. A former soldier, 15 years Francis' senior, he had undergone a profound religious conversion and was then gathering about himself a group of men who shared his ideas. Gradually, Ignatius won over the initial recalcitrant Francis, and Francis was among the band of seven who, in a chapel in Paris on August 15, 1534, vowed vows of piety and celibacy in intimation of Christ and solemnly promised to undertake a pilgrimage to the Holy Land and subsequently to devote themselves to the salvation of believers and unbelievers alike. Francis then performed the spiritual exercises, a series of meditations lasting about 30 days. After all the members of the band had completed their studies, they reassembled in Venice, where Francis was ordained priest on June 24, 1537. Having more than a year sought passage to the Holy Land in vain, the seven, along with the fresh recruits, went to Rome to put themselves at the disposal of Pope. Meanwhile, as a result of their preaching and care of the sick throughout central Italy, they had become so popular that many Catholic princes sought their services. Francis disembarked in Goa, the center of Portuguese activity in the East, on May 6, 1542. His companion had remained behind to work in Lisbon. Much of the next 3 years he spent on the southern east coast of India among the simple, poor, and pearl fishers, the Paravas. About 20,000 of them had accepted baptism 7 years before, chiefly to secure Portuguese support against their enemies. Since then, however, they had been neglected. Using a small catechism, he had translated into native Tamil with the help of interpreters. Francis traveled tirelessly from village to village, instructing and confirming them in their faith. His evident goodness and the force of his conviction overcame difficulties of verbal communication. Shortly afterwards, on the southern coast, indicated their desire for baptism, and after brief instruction, he baptized 10,000 of them in the last months of 1544. In the fall of 1545, news of opportunities for Christianity attracted him to Malaya. Following several months of evangelization among the mixed population of the Portuguese commercial center at the Malacca, he moved on to find missions among the Malayas and the head hunters. In the Spice Islands, in 1548, he returned to India, where more Jesuits had since arrived to join him. In Goa, the College of Faith, founded several years previously, was turned over to the Jesuits, and Francis began to develop it into a center for the education of native priests and catechists for the Diocese of Goa, which stretched from the Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa to China. Scholarships has dispelled many of the legends connected with Saint Francis Xavier and also defended him against his critics. A 20th century estimate put the figure of those baptized by him at about 30,000 as opposed to 1 lakh asserted by the Baroque exaggeration. In reality, he had to struggle with language wherever he worked and did not possess the gift of tongues attributed to him. He is justly credited for his idea that the missionary must adapt to the customs and language of the people he evangelizes, and for his advocacy of an educated native clergy, initiates not always followed by his successors. The areas he evangelized in India have remained Catholic to the present day. Vigorous and prolonged persecution in the 17th century did destroy the missions he founded in the Moluccas and Japan, but only after thousands had died as martyrs. Even before his death, Francis Xavier was considered a saint, and he has been formally venerated as such by the Catholic Church since 1622. In 1927, he was named patron of all missions. Saint Francis Xavier died from a fever at Shangchuan, Taishan, China on 3rd December 1552 while he was waiting for a boat that would take him to mainland China. Xavier was first buried on the beach at Shangchuan Island. His body was taken from the island in February 1553 and temporarily buried in St. Paul's Church in Portuguese. An open grave in church now marks the place of Xavier's burial. Pereira came back from Goa, removed the corpse shortly after 15th April 1553 and moved it to his house. On 11th December 1553, Xavier's body was shipped to Goa. The body is now in the Basilica of Born Jesus in Goa, where it was placed in a glass container encased in silver casket on 2nd December 1637. Thank you for watching.